Good evening, friends. Welcome back to another tutorial. Today is not going to be a sound design tutorial, but don't fret because the information in this video is going to be much more useful than any sound design knowledge you can imagine. And that is how to make great chord progressions. Not mediocre chord progressions, not good chord progressions, but great chord progressions. By the end of this tutorial, I want you guys to be able to make something like this. Let's start with the basics. So here's a very simple 4-chord progression in C major. What do you think about this chord progression? It's okay. It's not, terrible. We're not just working with triads, we're advancing the chords a little bit. But it's just 4 chords and there's nothing to the rhythm. It's just one measure, one chord, the next measure, another chord, and 4 chords, and then we repeat. To start making better chord progressions and more advanced chord progressions, you need to break the cycle of your 4-chord chord progression, because the more chords you have in there, the more emotion you can express. So I simply just added 4 more chords. Alright, so this one's a bit better. We have much more chords in here, and the dynamic we're expressing is much different than it was before. It was this bright and happy 4-chord progression, and this next part, the first chord we add down here, it's a little more dark and questioning, and then it kind of comes back to life with the rest of the chord progression. So, the mood, it starts off really nice, it dips down a little bit, and then it works back up. It kind of tells more of a story than the last chord progression did, the 4-chord progression, but we have a very boring rhythm. There's not much diversity in the rhythm going on. It's just, okay, you have one measure, one chord. The next measure, another chord. Instead of this being 4 times, it's 8 times now. How are we going to improve this? So now let's go back to the good chord progression that we really want to study here. And what I'm doing here to include all of these chords, and there's so many of them, so many more than before, is you need to pick what I like to call a home, a chord to return to at a consistent basis. And that we have this G major chord right here. That G, D, and B chord we're going to keep coming back to. You can see we have that triad, then chord whatever, coming back to that triad. It's a little bit different than before. It's just a different inversion, which you definitely want to switch up. But, we're still coming back. And then, again, we come back to the G major chord, and we come back again and again. And you can see a pattern where we're returning to this chord. It's rhythmically consistent on the chords that we return to this, which is very important because you want the listener to kind of expect when that chord's going to come back. Because if you just start making a chord progression with a bunch of random chords, even if they're all in key, it might not cooperate. Consistently returning to what I like to call the home is important because it ties the whole chord progression together. I'm going to play this again and listen for that G major chord. You could kind of expect when it's going to be played. Since we have that home chord being played at consistent spots in the progression, we can fill the holes, the areas, with completely different chords, and it's still going to sound pretty good because we're returning to that home chord. So you can play a different chord in the spaces as long as you're returning to that chord and you resolve to that home chord. The previous chord, which if you just stopped it there, would have sounded a little weird. And it comes back to the home chord, and then all of a sudden it resolves, and it makes sense. The point of this home chord is when you return to this home chord, you're kind of contextualizing, you're making sense of the last chord that you just played, which was totally random. I mean, it's obviously in key, and, there's nothing wrong with that chord itself. It's just, it might sound out of place in the progression until you resolve it. The rest of the little detail we have here is just chord inversions, velocity changes, as you can see at the bottom, and then we just have these little filler notes just to add some little rhythm, and then we could also add a melody on top of that when we're all done. The melody might sound a little bit weird without the chord progression being played with it. Let's play them together. So that's going to be it for this video. I really hope you guys learned something. If you did, it would mean a lot if you subscribed to the channel and checked out my music and my socials below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.